What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. I'm kicking off 2026 with a tutorial I've been wanting to make for almost a year now. How to build a realistic Gungan. Oh, wait, that's for the secret channel. Today, I'm going to show you how I build Freeform Mocs and hopefully explain it in a way that doesn't sound like this. If you're ready to learn some new tips, don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. Before we begin, I want to briefly explain what a Freeform Moc is. Typically, there are two ways to build a destination-themed LEGO Moc: on a molded base plate like these, or on a custom-built base like this. It's called Freeform because you're using LEGO pieces to create whatever shape and size you want for your scene. It's my preferred method for mock building, however. It's a lot more work and can be hard to get right, especially around the edges. But hopefully, after today, both you and I will have a better understanding of how to tackle a freeform build. In this video, I'm going to cover three basic types of freeform bases: rectangular, wedge plate, and brick built. I use this one the least, but it can be good for small urban themed mocks like a little chunk of a city or street. Start with your base in the shape and size you want and stick some headlight bricks underneath each of the corners and fill in the gaps with brick. Line each side with 2x plate and decorate those with whatever tiles, plates, scribbling you want to either match the scene above or depict pipes and other things running underneath the ground. This is an effective way to build a little display scene to showcase minifigs or small vehicles and provides a more interesting, robust base than just building on a flat base plate. Its biggest downside is just how basic it looks, which is why I'm more likely to go with the next option. The wedge plate base is great because you can create a more interesting shape without needing any crazy techniques or different pieces. Simply create the size and dimensions you want with large plates, then ring that foundation with different wedge plates. I found that 3x3 and 2x3 wedge plates are great at creating some nice angles and curves without them being too long and straight. Larger plates like these can be useful, but I've noticed they tend to make the mock look more unnatural because of the long straight lines they create, especially if I'm making something nature themed. The more variety of wedge plates used, the more wild and untamed the base will look, so keep that in mind for whatever project you're working on. Once your shape has been created, cover the top of that with another ring of wedge plates and keep repeating that until you're satisfied with the base. Sometimes I'll stack rows of different colors to represent sedimentary layers of dirt or rock with a green layer at the very top for plant life. You can pretty much do whatever you want with this style. The only thing to pay attention to is if the wedge plates are lining up and flowing together nicely. This is the type of base I'll build if I need a quick foundation for a mock, and they pretty much always turn out great and capture a cool floating look. The biggest downsides to this type of freeform are the amount of wedge plates required and the somewhat flat nature of the base. Unless you're stacking 5+ layers of wedge plates, the base is going to look very flat. But one thing I've seen people do and done myself is build a snot black frame to slide underneath. This creates a really cool styling effect and raises up the height of the mock. The third and final type of freeform is the brick built base. This one is the most complicated and time intensive, but it definitely produces the best results. I've struggled with this one for a while, and that's part of the reason I put off making this tutorial, wanting to wait until I had the perfect explanation and process to share. But we'd probably all be looking like Yoda in Return of the Jedi if I waited until everything was perfect to make this, so let's just dive in. Start by laying out your plate shape just like the previous two styles. I found making a pyramid foundation with a wide base at the back that narrows as it goes forward is a good option for most builds. If you can, start mapping out what you want to have on the mock. Things such as buildings, vehicles, or large plants. Picture how big they'll be and where they'll go in order to make sure you lay out enough plate to fit everything. I've learned that you don't want a lot of large, tall corners like this because it can make the mock edges look blocky and it's hard to cover them up later on. Instead, try to leave smaller corners with edges of 4 studs or less. It'll make more sense why later. Once your shape is all laid out, line the front and sides with one row of 1x plate. Now that the base is done, it's time to build the sides. The reason we add a row of plate on the foundation is because now it's 2 plates tall, which means if you stick a headlight brick on top, you can attach a brick or slope or 2x plate and it'll sit flush with the ground. This will allow us to build all the way around the mock and have the whole thing sit flush with the ground. This next step is the hard part of the process for me, creating the free-flowing edge. I think using slopes is the best way to go, especially for a beginner. I don't really have a method for how I place them other than just trying to build something that looks cool and all connects together to create one big shape. You can place the brick and slope alone or stack a couple together to create a larger shape, just whatever looks cool. When you get to a corner, try stacking 3 different slopes at 3 different angles to fill in the space, then cap those off with smaller slopes and some cheese slopes. There's really no right or wrong answer at this point. Just grab a bunch of pieces and experiment with them till you get something you're happy with. I know it's cliche and lame to say, but practice really is how I got better. The more I understood what slope patterns and techniques worked the best for me. You can also use wedge plates for some of the corners, combining 2 different styles of freeform, which can look really cool. Adding smaller round slopes and brick behind and on the sides of the wedge plate points helps blend them in with the rest of the build. If you got a long flat spot and don't want to use slopes, try sticking some wedge plates and tile on the 2x plate and attach that to the flat space. This is a great way to cover up a lot of distance with a relatively simple technique and works great for the sides and back of the base. One thing I've also started doing is adding roots and other plant pieces to the side walls. This will introduce some new pieces and looks to the frame and makes it look more interesting. Another thing I like to do is add a river or water spilling out of the sides to make it feel more dynamic. The more variety you have in slopes, the more complex of a shape you can make. Hopefully now you can see why having smaller corners is better. If they're 4 studs or less, it's much easier to cover them up with slopes and other pieces without the frame looking too blocky or bulging in certain areas. Plus, making smaller corners of different shapes will give you more control over what the overall look of the mock is going to be. If you're stuck at a certain spot, try flipping the slopes into a different position to create a new angle or shape. Combining parts also helps cover up some of the tricky corners. Combining a lot of smaller slopes and plate can create a more complex detailed area, or if you want to cover as much space as possible, 1x2x3 slopes always come in handy. The key here is just to start with a base and play around with what parts you have. After all the sides and front are done, we come to the easy part, plating off the top. To start, you'll ring the edge of the foundation with plate and wedge plate that mostly follows the shape you created with your frame. This way you won't have large blocky plates running right up to the edge of your mock, ruining the scene and making things look weird. This will be part of the finished ground, so make sure you use the proper color. Once all the wedge plates are on, fill in the middle with plate or whatever else it is you're building. This particular mock had a river running through it, so I made sure to add that before plating off the ground so I wouldn't cover where it needed to go. Freeform is such a challenging yet rewarding way to build. Even the edges can be packed full of detail and story if you take the time to add something. And once you've finished plating off the base, you can now begin to build your mock. This mock ended up being a World War II countryside, showcasing a beautiful Panther tank from Panzer Brick Labs that came across a group of soldiers eating a meal by an abandoned woodshed. There's a sprinkling of trees to add some height and snow clinging to the colder, darker parts of the build as spring has begun to emerge, melting the snow and waking up the flowers. This was the first time I added roots to the freeform base, as well as making it a different color from the rest of the mock, and that made so much of a difference. That contrast helped the freeform frame stand out more and feel like it has a place in the scene. The pieces all connect together in some way, creating one cohesive flowing shape. That was a lot of technical babble, and hopefully I didn't put you to sleep with it. To summarize, here are my 4 main takeaways from the video. First, start with a good frame. Take the time to lay it out nicely and add an extra row of plate on top so the sides will sit flush with the ground. Number 2, try and make the corners as small as you can. Lots of smaller corners and edges will give you more control over shaping the mock into something round and fluid. Number 3, practice. The more you build and tinker, the better your process will become, and the more you will recognize and develop patterns and techniques that work well. And lastly, don't be afraid to start small. This will help you focus more on techniques and part usage, and the more comfortable you get, the bigger you can go. I hope you enjoyed this video more than I hated making it. I love the idea of a tutorial, but when it comes to actually writing the script or trying to explain a process and technique, I suddenly turn into Prime Jar Jar with a zapped tongue. I'm no pro at freeform, and there are many ways to approach this style